Chapter 1: Ancient and Medieval Civilization. Part C: Arab. Introduction. The Arab civilization is one of the most important civilizations of the world. It originated in the Arabian Peninsula in Southwest Asia. The Arabian Peninsula is characterized by deserts and rocky terrain. As a result, the region was sparsely populated, with the population usually clustered near oases or near water sources. The region was inhabited by various tribes who lived in groups, forming small independent states. These tribes often fought with each other as there was no one single political authority ruling the region. Sandy deserts prevented the practice of agriculture. Very few sources of livelihood, limited land for cultivation of crops, and the availability of pastoral land led the Arabs to adopt animal husbandry or rearing of animals as the main occupation. They also turned to trading. The Arabs had trade relations with neighboring countries. They would import goods from eastern countries such as India and China and export to western countries. Before the advent of Islam in the 7th century, the Egyptian and Roman cultures had a predominant influence on the region, with the Arabs influenced by the religions of Judaism and Christianity. Some tribes worshipped nature and many tribal gods, that is, they were polytheist. They worshipped the Kaaba or the black granite shrine in Mecca. The Kaaba housed various idols of tribal gods and was considered an important pilgrimage center. Rise of Islam. The religion of Islam originated in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula. Its origin is linked to when God's word was revealed to Prophet Muhammad. One day, Muhammad was meditating in a cave on Mount Hira when the Archangel Gabriel or Jibril visited Muhammad and revealed to him the words of God. The year was 610 AD and Muhammad was 40 years old at that time. Over a period of 23 years, Muhammad continued to receive these revelations. Prophet Muhammad began to preach the divine revelations. The first followers of Islam were Prophet Muhammad's wife Khadija, his son-in-law Ali, his friend Abu Bakr, and companion Zayd. Prophet Muhammad was born in 571 AD in the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, which was involved in trade. His grandfather was the chief of the traders' caravans. Muhammad used to travel with his uncle and grandfather on the caravans. Muhammad's teachings were orally passed down and later recorded and compiled as the Holy Quran, the sacred scripture of Islam. The religion based on the teachings of the Quran is called Islam, and its followers are called Muslims or Musulmans. A compilation of the sayings and actions of Prophet Muhammad, known as the Hadith, shows the Muslims how to put the teachings of the Quran into practice. However, not everyone was ready to accept the new religion. Some Orthodox Arabs were against this new religion, and they started harassing the Prophet and his followers. They even planned to kill him. When the life of Muhammad was threatened in Mecca, he and his followers migrated to Medina in 622 AD. This journey is called Hijrah. It is considered an important event as it led to the eventual formation of the Islamic State. Therefore, the Islamic calendar begins with the day of this migration from the year 622 AD. Teachings of Islam. Let us understand the teachings of Islam. The word Islam means submission to the will of Allah. The central message of Islam is that there is only one God, that is Allah, and that one should live in complete submission to the will of Allah. Muslims believe in Qiyamah, or the Day of Judgment. It is the day when Allah will judge every human being's life to decide whether they should go to heaven or hell. Islam has 5 pillars of faith or obligations which every Muslim must carry out during his lifetime. The 5 pillars of Islam are: 1. Shahada, or the declaration of faith. Reciting the statement that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet is called Shahada. 2. Namaz, or prayer. Every Muslim must pray 5 times a day at dawn, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and dusk. 3. Zakat, or charity. A Muslim must give 2.5% of his wealth as alms or charity every year to the poor. 4. Roza, or fasting. Muslims have to observe a fast during the month of Ramzan. They have to abstain from food and drink from dawn to dusk during the month. 5. Hajj, or pilgrimage. Every Muslim should go on a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in his lifetime. Islam forbids idol worship. The teachings of Islam include respect to parents, equal justice to all, and a ban on drinking of alcohol or other intoxicants. Spread of Islam. After his flight from Mecca, Muhammad started building a theocratic state in Medina. He invaded and conquered the neighboring cities of Medina. In January 630 AD, he marched with an army of 10,000 Muslims to Mecca. Mecca surrendered and the people of Mecca accepted Islam. Prophet Muhammad and his followers returned back to Mecca. Later, other neighboring tribes in the Arabian Peninsula also embraced Islam. This way, Prophet Muhammad helped to spread Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. Prophet Muhammad died in 632 AD at the age of 63. Caliphate. Let us now learn who the successors of Prophet Muhammad were. Prophet Muhammad was succeeded by his friend Abu Bakr, who became the first caliph or supreme religious and political head of the Muslims. The term Caliphate refers to the religious political state of Muslims and lands conquered by them after the death of Muhammad. The Caliph was the religious head of Islam and the political head of the Islamic State. Abu Bakr was succeeded by Umar, Usman, and Ali as caliphs. All four were companions of Prophet Muhammad. The reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid was one of the most celebrated in the history of the Caliphate. He patronized various scholars, poets, musicians, and scribes, which in turn led to advances in science and literature. Under his rule, the Caliphate became financially prosperous. Harun al-Rashid was also featured as the protagonist in several stories of the book Arabian Nights. Expansion of the Arab Empire. Prophet Muhammad brought together various tribes in the Arabian Peninsula into a single unified state through the religion of Islam. Muhammad's successor Abu Bakr, who was the first caliph, annexed some part of Syria from the Byzantine Empire. The next caliph, Umar, brought the remaining parts of Syria and also Iraq, Iran, and Egypt under the Arab Empire. Thus, the Arab Empire stretched across North Africa, West Asia, and Spain in Europe. During the Umayyad dynasty of caliphs, the Arab Empire reached up to Samarkand in the east and up to Sindh in the south. The Arabs entered India in the 8th century AD. The Turkish tribes also embraced Islam. After the Umayyad dynasty, the Abbasid dynasty became caliphs. The Abbasid dynasty expanded the Arab Empire further and shifted their capital from Damascus to Baghdad. Very soon under the Abbasid rule, Baghdad became a prosperous city. Economic life of the Arabs. The Arabian Peninsula is mostly characterized by deserts except for mountains in the south. The sandy desert region limited the practice of agriculture. As a result, the Arabs turned to trade as a means of livelihood. Soon, trade and commerce became a flourishing industry in the region. The Arabs were proficient in metalwork, including gold, silver, bronze, and iron. They were also adept at making glasswares and earthenwares. The Arabs were also recognized for exquisite work in weaving and dyeing clothes, producing leather products, making perfumes and scents. They started trading in all these commodities. The Arabs gained control of the world's trade routes after the fall of the Roman Empire. In a short period of time, they established their dominance in international trade. the cities of Baghdad, Bukhara, Samarkand, and Damascus quickly became centers of international trade. Thus, Arab trade brought together the Eastern and Western world. Agriculture was restricted to date farming and growing crops on a small scale near oases. Crops were grown depending on the availability of water. The Arabs knew water harvesting and the use of fertilizers. They were also good at cultivating various fragrant flowers, which they used for making perfumes. They also cultivated different varieties of fruits. Cultural life of Arabs. The expansion of the Arab Empire brought the Arabs into contact with various cultures, which in turn influenced Arab culture. The Arabs were influenced by the Greek and Roman cultures of Europe and the Persian and Indian cultures of Asia. As a result, the Arab culture emerged as a fusion of various cultures. The caliphs were instrumental in the spread of Islam and the Arab Empire. During the reign of the caliphs, huge advances were made in the fields of art, science, and architecture. The cities of Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem became renowned as religious centers. Baghdad, Bukhara, and Samarkand became popular trade centers, while Cordoba and Lisbon emerged as educational centers. Contribution of Arabs. The period between the rise of Islam and establishment of the first Islamic state is considered the Golden Age of Islam. The Arabs were experts at designing precious jewelry and metal urns. The Silk Route was a series of trade routes from China to the Mediterranean Sea, connecting East and West Asia. The Arabs reached China through the Silk Route for trading in silk. There they learned the process of making paper, gunpowder, compass, and porcelain, and spread the same to European countries. The Arabs also dominated the trade of horses. Through trade and conquest, the Arabs introduced many new varieties of plants to Europe, including fruits like orange, lemon, apricot, peaches, and various flowers. The Arabs introduced to Europe the numerals from 1 to 9 and the concept of zero, which were both invented by the Indians. Even though the Europeans call these numbers as Arabian numbers, the Arabs themselves called these numbers as Hindsa, signifying their Indian origin. The Arabs patronized scholars and writers and were also interested in integrating scientific knowledge gained from the regions they had conquered. They also translated various ancient classic texts into Arabic and Persian and other languages. As a result, during the Islamic rule, tremendous advances took place in the field of learning, literature, and science. Under the rule of the caliphs, Baghdad was transformed into a famous trade and education center. The Abbasid dynasty of caliphs started the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which included a library and an academy with a translation bureau where a number of books were translated. It was a major intellectual center. The Al-Azhar University in Cairo, started in 970 AD, was a major center of Islamic learning and at one time had 12,000 students. In the late 19th century, the university was reorganized and today it is a modern university offering various secular courses. Knowledge of science and literature. The Arabs made significant contributions to the fields of learning, literature, and science. Many great poets, philosophers, scientists, and historians flourished during the Islamic rule. The Arabs developed the Qasida, which is a form of Persian Arabic lyric poetry, and the Hikayat, which is a form of prose. The famous Arabian Nights stories were written during the Arab rule. Ibn Rashid, also known as Averroes, was an Arab philosopher and scholar who produced a series of summaries and commentaries and most of Aristotle's works and on Plato's Republic. Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, was a Persian scholar who wrote more than 240 books on philosophy, medicine, geometry, and astronomy, etc. As a result, he is known as the Prince of Arabian scholarship. Further, he brought the ancient Greek philosophy tradition to the Arabs. Omar Khayyam was a famous poet of this period who wrote quatrains or rubaiyat, which are 4-line verses. Ibn Khaldun was an eminent Spanish Arab historian and historiographer who wrote on historiography, sociology, and economics. The term algebra, which is a branch of mathematics, originates from the Arabic word al-jabr. The 11th century Persian historian Al-Biruni spent several years in India studying Indian culture and philosophy and later wrote a book called Tarikh-e-Hind, which describes Indian culture and life. Ibn Battuta was a 14th century Moroccan traveler who over 30 years visited around 44 countries and wrote an account of his travels. This book is called Safarnama in Urdu. Art and architecture. Arab art and architecture was influenced by architecture of the Roman, Byzantine, and Persian regions, which were conquered by the Arabs. The Arab style of architecture was characterized by semicircular arches, domes, tall minarets, filigree work, and carvings. Mosaics of repetitive geometrical patterns were also used. The Arabs constructed mosques, tombs, forts, palaces, and other buildings. They built new highways and rebuilt trade routes of the Romans. They also made canals for irrigation. The exquisite architectural skills of the Arabs can be seen even today in the mosques of Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, Cairo, Cordoba, and Samarkand, and in the white marble palaces of Damascus, Baghdad, and Istanbul. The Arabs also built beautiful gardens. Thus, as the Arabs tried to spread the religion of Islam, they conquered new lands, gained control of international trade, and made advances in the fields of art, science, architecture, philosophy, etc. In the process, they were able to unite Eastern and Western culture.
If you like our videos, please do share and subscribe to our channel.